What is up, guys? Welcome back to the last holiday themed video for the season. Today's video, I'm going to show you how you can draw this cute Santa from start to finish. It's all in real time too, no time lapse, no edits. So if you want to follow along step by step and draw with me, keep watching. Alright guys, so let's go ahead and draw Santa Claus. Starting out, I'm using a 4000 by 4000 300 DPI canvas. For my brush, I'm going to start out sketching, so I'm going to use my HB pencil. This is part of my pencil pack that's available now. And for my color palette, once again, I've got this pre-made. You can download this for free and follow along with the same colors in today's tutorial. You just head over to my website, bjadell.com. Underneath the YouTube reference materials page, which I'll link this in the description below as well. You'll find just a JPEG thumbnail of this. Just long press to bring up the save menu on your iPad, save it to your camera roll. Then once you're back in Procreate, come up to your wrench icon, insert a photo, bring up your camera roll, pick that palette that you saved. It's going to bring it in as a separate layer into Procreate, and then you can just long press each of the colors as we go through today's tutorial. So let's go ahead and get started. To begin with, I'm going to switch my color to black, just since I'm sketching, and I'm going to start out with just a basic circle here in the center. That's going to be the start of our Santa. It's going to be the shape of the face. I start out with basic circles, basic shapes, just to kind of map out where everything goes. It's going to be really rough in the sketch stage, but we'll bring down a couple of curved lines here for the beard, and then bring down some curved lines here towards the center that are going to meet there. Kind of a triangle down there. And then where these sides of the beard come up and meet that circle, we'll start the hat. So we'll just bring around a curved line here for the bottom part of that hat. Bring up some curved lines here for the sides. And then the top curve here. It's going to be that white section of the Santa Claus hat. And then from here, we'll continue to bring this up kind of into a cone shape here at the top for the rest of the hat, and then follow this line back and down where that overlap kind of occurs. And then we'll add the ball there on the end. From here, where these kind of meet, we can add some circles here for the ears. Get those kind of blocked in. And then from here, I think I want to do the nose. I want to have a pretty big nose here, so we'll have a big flattened oval here for the nose. Now that we've got that in there, we can kind of use that as our guide for where the mustache goes. So the mustache of the beard here, we'll pull it kind of some angled lines here, kind of down into the sides. A couple more angled lines down here for the mustache. You kind of come back in and over. Then here in the center, it'll be kind of like a triangle there, cut out where those meet. So there's the mustache. Next up, let's go ahead and kind of bring an oval down here. It's going to be for the opening of the beard where the mouth is going to be. We can bring the mouth in down underneath the mustache here. Have a lip line down there. Tongue then inside there, finish off the mouth there. So we've got that done. Next up, let's go ahead and do the eyes. So I'm going to have just some really kind of basic cartoon eyes here, just some really elongated ovals, having one bigger than the other just to add to that kind of cartoon feel. So kind of tapered lines here coming around the eyes, and then maybe doing some kind of age laugh lines there on the eyes. And then finish it off here with a couple of eyebrows, the left one and the right one. Some curved lines here for those. All right, and that's going to be our basic sketch. So we've got everything laid in. Now it's time to start doing the actual inking process. So for this, I'm going to come up to my layers menu here. I'm going to make a new layer. This layer 2 is going to be where our inks are going to go. And then for layer 1, I'm going to hit the N to bring up blend mode. I'm going to drop down the opacity of this to about 45%, 44, 45, something like that. Just want it to be visible, but not super, super dark. I don't want it to be distracting when we go in to lay our lines down for our inks. So now that we've got that done, let's come up to our brush library. And for this, I'm going to use my cartooning set. I'm going to use the standard inker Streamline for this. And for the color, back to our color palette here, I'm going to choose this first color on the top row. That's going to be our outlines color. Now that we've got all that selected, we need to decide where's our light source coming from. So I've talked about this numerous times in previous videos. Before you ink, deciding where the light source comes from is really going to help you with your line weights. Anything closer to the light source is going to have thinner lines. Anything further away is going to have thicker, heavier lines. And it kind of does the heavy work of showing the viewer where the shadows are. It's going to help you when you go in to actually do the highlights and the shadows. So with the previous videos in this series, I had the light source coming in here from the top right, and I think we're just going to continue that with this one. So now that we've got that decided, once again, we're on layer 2 here, and I'm going to pull in so we can see this. So lighter here, darker here. I'm going to start with the top of this hat. And to get this effect, basically, to get a lighter line, you just press not as hard, and you just add pressure as you come around the stroke. Takes some getting used to kind of get the feeling down for it, but I'll show you here how this goes. So lighter line here, thicker here, just by pressing heavier. I'll try that one more time. And it depends on your workflow too and how your hand reacts. Sometimes it might be easier if you start heavier and go lighter. Sometimes it might be easier if you start lighter and go heavier. So just kind of play around with it and see exactly how you like to do it. I'm going to switch my brush over here to my standard inker Streamline to kind of clean that up. Same thing here, we'll just kind of pull that in a little bit. And as far as my pressure sensitivity goes for Procreate, I have it set just on the default. So a lot of people ask me that question and think there's some secret sauce to that, but it is just the default that Procreate automatically goes to, so I don't change anything there. We've got that. I get the circle here. I'm going to start out kind of lighter and go heavier here at the bottom. Locking that in and then holding down with my other finger to lock it in as a circle. So there we go. Next up, we'll get this line here coming around. I'm going to start heavier here, and then get lighter here as I go around. So we'll pull this line up and across and back down. Now we just need to connect those lines. I'm going to erase these here just a little bit. Going back to my brush now, bring this line around. And once again, this is going to be a lighter line. It's on the inside. So I usually like to keep my interior lines lighter than my outlines. So keep that in mind as you start to lay these down. Always go lighter on the inside. Now we've got that done, I'm going to go ahead and switch back to my brush, and we can go ahead and start with the beard. So once again, heavier back here, and then also heavier down towards the bottom. So I'm going to bring this line down and down. Oops, held it down a little bit too long there. It started to lock in. So there's that. I'm going to pull up a little thing there, and then we'll connect this line down here. All right, so there we go. Let's go ahead and do the ears next. This one's going to be a little bit heavier here. Let's bring this up and around. Go to the right-hand side and do the ear over here, trying to get the size about the same from left to right. So there's that. I think next up, we'll go ahead and do the nose. So we're going to start lighter here, heavier on the side and down at the bottom, and then lighter as we come back up and around. We'll do that one more time here. Locking that in by holding down. We've got our nose in there. Let's go ahead and add the eyes in next. So do a oval here, holding down to lock it in, and I'll drag and drop my color in. Same thing for this side. Dragging and dropping. Then going back to my brush for my eraser here. Getting the reflections in here of the eyes. So we've got those in there. Going back to my brush now, we'll pull up some of the tapered lines here around. Tapered line there, and then do another one over here. there's that. And let's go ahead and do the laugh lines here. Bring these really light tapered lines around here. I'm going to zoom in quite a bit so we can get these looking really nice. Once again, I've talked about this before. It is really in your best interest if you're using digital art to zoom in as close as you can when you're doing stuff. Because if it looks good close up, it's going to look fantastic once you zoom back out. So now that we've got that, let's go ahead and do the mustache now. So we'll go a little bit heavier over here, back up. And I think I'm going to taper this line and overlap here like that. Do the same thing down here, pull this over. I'll try that one more time, it was a little shaky there. Pull this one down and back up into the nose there. All right, so that looks good. From here, we can go ahead and work on getting the beard down and around. So I think I'm gonna taper these off too. So on a tapered line there, tapered line here. Kind of bring these down and connect them. There we go. So we got the beard coming down there. Looks good. Let's get the beard coming down here. Do kind of a little jagged line there. And we'll get the mouth in here next. Tongue. Rest of the inside of the mouth there. I've got a little overlap right there I want to get rid of. All right, so there we go. Last thing we got to do here is the eyebrows. So for this, the eyebrows are going to overlap the top of that hat there. So I'm going to make a new layer here. That's going to allow me to draw over top of there and erase those overlaps. So going back to my brush now. I usually like, I've talked about before, I like the bottom of the brow kind of heavier than the top. Kind of shows that weight there. Same thing over here, kind of heavier on the bottom and then lighter on the top as that comes down and around. And you see with this, I'm not following those sketch lines perfectly. I'm not tracing them. I've talked about this quite a bit before too. I really, really like to keep the inking organic. And if you try to trace everything, if you follow along too perfectly, it's not gonna have that nice flow to it. So feel free just to use your sketch more as a suggestion of where things go. Now I can erase those overlaps. So if I go to layer 2 now, coming back in here, see these erase really easy and I don't have to worry about hitting those lines that I just drew for the eyebrows. So by using multiple layers for your inks really helps you out as far as that goes. So now that I've got that done, I'm gonna go ahead and merge these together. So coming up to layer 3, I'm just gonna go to merge down, or you can pinch them. And then I'm gonna start to add in some extra details here. So I'm gonna switch my brush off a streamline. I'm gonna just go to the standard inker. One thing we've done with the previous tutorials in the holiday series is this little effect here, just doing these kind of pricklies around the hat. I did on the scarves and mittens and gloves before too. This kind of just makes it look like it's made of the wool material. So just by putting those around kind of haphazardly gives that effect. Can also come in here, I'll zoom in super close so you can see this, and just kind of pull in some tapered kind of crescents around there to kind of build up the texture of that white section of the hat, as well as the ball there on the end. And then finally, I kind of want to add in some extra lines here on the beard and mustache. So usually what I do if I'm doing mustaches and beards, I like to do some tapered lines like this, coming out from underneath the nose. With this, it's just kind of a quick flick of the wrist, and you start out kind of thick and go to a thinner line as it goes up. Once again, this just takes some practice and some getting used to, and once you get pretty good at it, you'll kind of get the hang of it and it'll come super easy. So we've got that. Let's do the same thing around the beard as well. You can pull some here off of that cheek area, and then we can pull some more up here in the center, coming down from the top here as well. Do the same thing here underneath the chin. Get some of those in there. As you can see too, I'm kind of doing this radial type of thing. It's kind of coming out from a center point, and it has this kind of turn of the way the lines go. Kind of follows the way that the beard's going. These in here, and then move on to the next step. All right, so I think that looks pretty good. All of our inks are done, so let's move on to actually adding the color flats now. So to add colors, I'm going to come up here to my layers menu. I'm going to turn off my sketch layer, and with that turned off, then I'm going to go ahead and set my lines layer as reference. This is going to allow us to drag and drop colors in by making a new layer. So I'm going to do that now by pressing the plus button. We're going to drag this under layer 2. And with this, I'm actually going to do a couple of color flats layers. If you watched the ferret video that I did previous to this one, you'll know that I used a couple of different colors for the shadows, and some of them overlapped, had to go back in and do some erasing. And by doing 2 different color flats layers, we're going to be able to do 2 different shadow layers. Since we're using 2 different colors, it's going to speed up the process. So with that now made, reference set on layer 2, I'm going to come back up to my color palette here, and we'll choose the skin tone first. We'll just drag this in, get the ears and the face and the nose, and then the bottom part of the mouth down there underneath. Next up, we'll go ahead and use red and drop that in. And that's going to be it for that color flats layer. So now what we're going to do is we're going to come back up here, and we're going to go ahead and make another new layer. I'm also going to change my background color. This, you can change it to whatever you want. We just can't have it white because we can't see where we've done our white coloring at. So now that that's set, we're going to come up to our color palette and choose white. On this new layer, I'm going to drag in the white to the beard and everything that needs to be white. Get these in there. And then, actually, I think I'm going to make another color flats layer now too to make this even easier. So one more color flats layer. We're going to do the eyebrows on that one, and then the mouth. So let's go ahead. This color here is kind of magenta color. It's going to be the inside here. Further part on the inside is going to be that darker color. And then I've got pink on that second line. That's going to be for the tongue. So we've got the color flats done now. I'm going to go ahead and change the background color back to white so we can see what we're left with. And there we go. Looks pretty good. I want to add just a little bit more to it though. So to do this, I'm going to come up to my layers menu. I'm going to go to layer 3, and then I'm going to make a new layer, and I'm going to set this as clipping mask. Clipping mask is going to allow us to color on this layer, and it's not going to go outside any of the colors that are down here. So with this, I kind of want to add in just a little bit of more color, just a rosy color to it. So with that pink still selected from the tongue, that's what we're going to use for this. Coming back to my brush library, I'm going to move over to airbrushing. And this is just a default brush that Procreate has, so everyone with Procreate has the airbrush. And I'm just going to use the soft airbrush. And I'm just going to color in just a little bit of the nose here to get a nice rosy color out of the nose. We'll get that in there, and you can see how that's starting to affect that. This overlap here into the face, I'm going to erase that because I want to keep that on the nose. I'm going to add some more to the face, but I'm going to have that kind of pulled off to the side. So we'll get that erased here. And then coming back to that, I'm just going to have the cheeks over here kind of rosied up a little bit. And you can see here, I've still got some of that other showing up. So if I go in here and erase a little bit better, and now get the cheeks rosied up here. And this I'm just pressing really light and just kind of building up that color. I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. I'm going to hit the tops of the ears here. And then I'm also going to hit the lip here too at the bottom. Build that up down there a little bit. And then maybe even underneath the chin a little bit too. See, I'm just adjusting my brush size as I go back and forth. And there we go. You can see it just adds in a little bit nicer of a color. So now that we've got our color flats done, it's time to start adding the shadows and highlights. So let's start with shadows first. Once again, we've got the light source coming in from here. So shadows are going to be on this side. And we'll start with the face and the hat layer, layer 3. So I'm going to go ahead and make a new layer. And I'm going to set this to clipping mask. And that's going to clip all the way down to this one. Back up to our color palette here. The second color on the bottom row, that's what we're going to use for our shadows starting out. That selected, I'm going to come back to my brush library and I'm going to move back to my standard inker streamline. And then I'm also on my layers menu going to turn off reference on layer 2. So that's going to allow me to drag and drop colors in here once I have everything connected. So now that we've got that, let's go ahead and start. I'm going to zoom in here so you can see it a little bit better. I'm just going to bring down some lines here, kind of connect these as they come in. Back up and around. And you can see here, I'm going to use a different shadow color down on the white. And since we've got that on a separate layer and clipping mask enabled, it's not coloring in that white. So we don't have to do some cleanup later on, which is kind of nice. It saves us time. So now that we've got that done, I'm going to go ahead and bring a shadow in here around underneath the hat and kind of down back into the face here, erasing that part of the overlap with the nose. Continue to bring this around. And once we have this connected, since we have reference turned off, I can just drag and drop that in. It makes it really nice and easy. Bring in some shadows here underneath the eyes, which I always like to do just because it really kind of makes those eyes pop a little bit more. One of my go-to things that I do. And you can see here too, now that I got in closer, you can still kind of see some of that pink in here. So by switching my brush back here, I can get in here a little bit tighter now and get some of that pink gone that didn't show up. That's why I talk about zooming in, super important. And that's why, because you can see little stuff like that. So I'm going to go back to my shadows layer now and kind of finish this up. So bring these around up into the eyebrow, kind of have this come back down into that eyebrow. Taper there, same thing over here. As this taper comes out, we'll kind of pull that into that shadow there. So that's done. Let's get the inside or the entirety of this ear filled in, and then we'll do the, whoops. We'll do the other ear, the inside over here in this one. All right. And then finally, we need to get the nose here on this top section. Then we'll move on to the mouth part. So bring in a shadow down and around here. Drag and drop that in. And then a shadow down here. So you'll see here, I'm just kind of following these curves as they come up. This curves up into there, and then we'll curve this one out into the mouth, the bottom lip here. You'll see too, as I'm doing this, I'm kind of twisting the canvas. If you're doing it straight on sometimes, it might be a little bit more of a struggle with the way that your hand flows and your arm moves. So if you twist and turn the canvas as you're doing it, you might find it easier to get some of these nicer lines. So now that we've got those done, let's go ahead and go back up to our layers menu with that layer 7 selected, our shadows layer. Hit the N again and drop the opacity of this. And I think probably dropping it down to about there, about 25%. Looks pretty good. And you'll see here now with the inside of this ear, I've got this darkened in. This ear I can't darken in because it's all the same color. So to be able to do this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to long press on this dark shadow color here. And then I'm going to go back up to my layers and I'm going to go to my color flats layer here. And using that dark shadow color, I'm going to color inside this ear. And you'll see, even though this is the same color, it shows up darker because it's on that color flat layer, and then you have the shadows on top of there making that base color even darker. So there we go. We've got that in there. That looks good. Next up, let's go ahead and do the shadows on the other layers. So we'll do the white next. Back up to our layers menu, making a new layer. I'm going to set this as clipping mask. And then going up to my color palettes here, I'm going to switch over to this blue. That's going to be the shadow color that we use. Zooming in here a little bit so you can see where this one kind of tapers. Here's where I'm going to start this one. And I'm just going to pull some fun little lines there around. Bringing this up and connecting everything here, which will allow me then to color drop that in if everything is connected, which it should be at this point. We'll drag and drop that. So we've got that. Let's go ahead next and work on the mustache. So we'll bring in, once again, kind of taper in that line. Starts off thin here and gets thicker down and around. Bring that down here. And then once again, just going to start to connect this around. Just want to get a big area done before I actually go in and drop the opacity of this. Bring up a tapered line here. Back up and into the chin there. And then once we have this connected, which do we? You never know until you go to drop. So we do. We have it connected, so it filled everything in. So we're good there. And get the bottom here of the ball. And we can also get the bottom of these as well. Get those underneath there. We can do the same thing on these. Kind of starting thicker back there at the back and thinning it out towards the front. All right, so that's done. Let's go ahead and work on the opacity now. So coming back up to the layers menu, gonna hit N for blend mode and drop down the opacity here to, let's say, about 30%. I think that looks pretty good. So we've got that locked in. Now we need to go in and I'm gonna actually remove some of these shadows. So I've talked about this before too, and this, especially on the beard, is gonna add just a little bit extra as far as details go. So with my standard inker streamline selected, I'm gonna go in here and the front of these lines, I'm gonna remove part of these lines here, or part of the shadow there on these lines, to just break these up a little bit and show that these do have two different color values. When you get a big section of shadows on a design, sometimes it's hard to kind of tell that it's shadowed just because there is so much colored in. So if you go in here and do little stuff like this, it'll help to break up the design a little bit and adds just a little bit extra to the viewer's experience. So I'll just pull these lines like this, keeping these on that right hand side of those lines. And now that we've got those, what we're going to do is we're actually going to go in and add some more shadows using the brush again. I'm going to drop a shadow on the left hand side of the lines that don't have that shadowed area in them. So just pulling the shadows here on the back sides of those lines, kind of does the reverse of what we did on that other side. Those in there. And then I also want a shadow here coming underneath the mustache as well. Have that taper down there. And pull that a little bit more straight across. Now with this, we don't have the shadow actually in here. So what we need to do is we need to come into our layer 7 again. That's the shadow layer for that part of the mouth. Switch our color back here. This is one of the benefits of doing shadows all in one layer is you don't have to do this, but if you're doing separate layers, you got to match up the shadows. So that's something to keep in mind if you do use separate layers for shadows. Back to blue, back to our shadow layer here. And clean up this line here as it comes in. And once again, just continue adding the shadows to the left-hand side of these lines. Go, a couple more here. And I think that is pretty good. So we've got those finished. The blue shadows are done. We've got the eyebrows left and the inside of the mouth, which we put on a separate layer. So let's do that next. Coming up to layer 5, making a new layer, setting this to clipping mask as well. And I'm gonna start to pull in just some tapered lines here for this shadowed area. Kind of pulling out there from the eyebrow. See, I've got a couple of marks here. I'm not really worried about those right now though. It's again kind of twisting the canvas around so I can get the lines to work like I want them to. Just got some nice tapers there on the ends. And then I can go ahead and come back up here now to my layers, hitting that N and dropping down the opacity of that to, I think we had it around 30 something. So that matches up there. And then finally coming in here to the tongue. Let's go ahead for this, and I don't know if that brownish color will work on the tongue. Yeah, that works pretty good. So we'll get a shadow here around the back. Once again, kind of curving that. Selecting white now. Add a little highlight here to the front. A couple of dots in there. And let's go ahead and add another shadow here to the inside. You'll see, since I'm all in one layer, I'm doing the highlights there, even though I'm saving them for another layer on top. And with this, I think I'm going to use, let's try the color that we used for the actual lines there, and we can kind of bring in a shadow here inside, so it's not just a solid color. All right, and there we go. So shadows are done. Finally, we need to add highlights, and those are pretty much just going to go on the layer that has the hat and the face, because those are the only non-white layers. So coming up to layer 7, making a new layer again and setting this as clipping mask. And coming up to our color palette and choosing white. Once again, highlights. Light source coming in from here, so highlights are going to be on this side here. So get that in there. Bring in another highlight there. And then we need to do the highlights here on the face. So I'm going to do a pretty big oval highlight here on the nose. Get that in there. Maybe another small one here off to the side. Top of the ear. And maybe one on the cheek here. Like that. And then I think one more down here on the lip. Get in here a little bit tighter so we can see it better. I just want this to kind of follow that same flow of those lines. So now that we've got that, let's adjust the opacity. Going back up to our layers menu, and for blend mode and dropping this down. I think probably about 35% is good on that. So there we go. We've got that, and that's our basic design with the inks, the color flats, and the shadows and highlights. But let's go ahead and finish this off by giving him a background. So to do this, let's go ahead and go up to our layers menu again, coming down to the bottom here. I'm going to go ahead and make a new layer. And coming back to my color palette, I'm choosing green. I'm just going to do a circle here in the background. Holding down with one finger and then the other one to lock it into a circle. Drag and drop that in there. So we got a nice circle there. Going up to my arrow to kind of change the size of this using uniform, make it a little bit bigger. And I think with this, rather than having a perfectly framed circle, let's cut this in half. Of course, you could go in and use an eraser to do this, but I like one of the quirks of Procreate instead. So using this method is a lot easier. If you go up to your arrow and then we drag this circle down, you'll see it has two dots here on the left and right. If we have those meet that edge of the canvas there, and then we hit our arrow again, and then once again to move it back up, you'll see that cuts that into a perfect half circle. So using that technique is going to save a lot of time if you want to do something like that and don't want to try to erase. You might have a line coming at an angle, or it might have an incline to it. So that's a little bit easier way to do it. So now that we've got that done, let's add in some extras. If you guys haven't watched the previous holiday themed videos, the next step, I'm going to use my eraser and I'm going to go to my holiday Christmas pack. Like I said, if you haven't watched the videos, this is a totally free brush pack that I'm giving you guys for the holidays to, I guess, say thank you for being a viewer and watching my channel. I really appreciate you guys. So I'll go ahead and link this down in the description, but it's free on Gumroad right now. It's got 5 different tree brushes and 5 different snowflakes. So let's just do tree 3. I'm gonna come in here and erase some trees here at the bottom, changing the size as I go so that they kind of have a variety of sizes here. And then we'll come here to the left and do the same thing over here. Just trying to get it to where you can see them, and like I said, they have different sizes to them. Just want them to line up so that they look nice. Try it one more time, and I think here, I'm just going to switch back to my regular brush here and just erase that extra green part there. Same thing there, just so that they all attach there on that side. So there we go. Coming back up to my holiday brushes, then I'm going to use some snowflakes here and just remove some areas here, changing my brush, changing my size. So I've just got a variety all around here. We'll do the same thing then on this other side, just switching these up as I go. A smaller one there, maybe a bigger one down here. And change it one more time here and add another one. There we go. And then from here, let's go ahead and let's go back to our eraser. Just gonna use my standard inker and just put some snowflake dots in here too. I want it to be all the kind of more detailed snowflakes. I just want some extra ones like this in here, kind of falling down there in the background. So there we go. Last thing we need to do is just sign this. So coming back up to my layers menu, going up to the top, making a new layer, picking my outline color here, zooming in, get this guy signed. Last time I signed 20. All right, so there we go. The final holiday themed drawing tutorial for this season. Cute little Santa Claus there. Thank you guys for watching. I appreciate it. If you like today's video too, make sure you give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit that bell for notifications. When I post new videos, you'll receive those. I think the new videos in the series are done as far as holiday goes, but new drawing tutorials are going to come up after the first of the year. That's when the new ones are going to be available. I'm going to do some changes to the website over the next week or so, so that's why I'm not doing any videos. There's going to be some changes to the look and feel of the channel too, so hopefully you guys will tune back in for that. That's next up on the plate. But that's it for today. If you guys do take part in these tutorials, if you draw any of these, I want to see what you guys are doing. So definitely post them online. If you're on Instagram or Twitter, tag me at BJDell. Or if you're on Facebook, you can also post them over there. I've got a group called Keep Creating, a group for artists by artists, which I will link it in the description below. You can post your designs based on these tutorials or just any artwork in general. It's an awesome place to be. I want you guys to be a part of it. So you can meet new friends, give feedback, get feedback. It's a pretty cool place. So hop on over if you haven't already. And that's it. I want to wish everybody happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Merry Kwanzaa, Happy Kwanzaa, the whole nine. I really appreciate you guys watching the videos and love each and every single one of you. So thanks so much. And that's it. So until next time, keep creating.